I'm Randall. I'm one of the founders of a company called BoltFoundry. We're building a way to have a local Mac app that lets you have a fleet of agents that do work for you. My background's really weird in that I used to be a journalist. So I started my career 20 years ago working for technology publications. I worked at this place called Engadget, another one called CNET. In school, I actually studied communication. That was my topic of study. So I studied how to be a journalist and stuff. Through that, eventually I came up with like a lot of ideas that I wanted to start executing against. So I started working at some places in Silicon Valley. I worked at this place called Justin.tv, which became Twitch. I was like a super early employee there. Through that experience, I got exposed to this thing called Y Combinator. People maybe know what YC is, hopefully. I was YC's in-house AV guy for a couple of years. I was just producing demo day. I was like the person who's like making sure the mics worked and like setting up the chairs and stuff. Gary Dan and I were like, Gary was like running the presentations and I was like making sure the mixer worked. So through that experience, I learned a lot about startups. I learned that no one is going to do my idea unless I did it myself. So I learned to code. I built a company called Vidpresso, which did Y Combinator in 2014, and it was acquired by Facebook in 2018. And the technology was folded into Facebook Live. So I worked on live and creator tooling at Facebook for 5 years. And then I left Facebook a couple of years ago to work with my friends on this company, BoltFoundry. When we started BoltFoundry, originally it was a way to take long videos and turn them into short videos. So we had like a lot of comedy. We have like comedians and comedy clubs as our customers. We had a bunch of people all over who, like Gabriel Iglesias, our biggest customer. But then we also had other people who were like comedy clubs throughout New York and LA who would take comedy sets and turn them into short clips. And the problem was that as we got more customers, we spent more and more time being the humans in the loop. So we would be taking the output of the LLM and making sure that it was good or whatever. So that made us start asking a lot of questions about like, okay, how can AI actually be reliable? How can you make it do the things you want and know that it's doing the things you want? That led us on this journey that we're on today, where we have an open source framework called Gambit that is like an LLM execution framework. It doesn't really matter, but like it's a way to prove an AI works the way you expect and fix it when it doesn't. And then BoltFoundry, the desktop app, is the thing we're working right now. It's a security first approach to agent orchestration. I don't know, it's pretty new, so I don't have a great like one-liner for it yet. Most of our customers today are small businesses in the US who they typically are under-resourced. And our sort of tagline is that we want to 10x your team without 10xing your headcount. So yeah, that's the sort of stuff that I've been working on. I've been deep into doing like vibe coding-ish things for a while. Here, I was like at the conference that Claude Code was announced at, and I was like, this sounds weird, whatever. And I started using it pretty early, but I was actually really frustrated by it pretty early. So I've been like doing a lot. I built a lot of my own infrastructure last year so that I could use vibe coding in a way that I wanted. And a lot of the stuff I'm going to show you today is now the basis for what our product BoltFoundry. But it all comes from this like frustration of vibe coding not working the way that I wanted. Yeah, so I can like share my screen and we can just start like talking. I guess like Khan's like and I have talked for a while. I don't know, Khan, if you think I should say anything before I jump in.
No.
All right, cool. I just wanted to like do a context check. Of course, my Chrome is not set up to screen share because of course it's not. So I'm going to click the button and then I'm going to be right back because I haven't screen shared on this computer in a bit. It's classic.
In the meantime, if you guys have any questions, you guys can put in the chat or just raise your hand. Either one works. Or if you have any questions right now, you can just ask. Khan, since you know Randall, what is specifically something that we should focus on?
Randall has a significantly more in-depth knowledge of a lot of AI stuff. So if you ask someone about AI, they will tell you, oh, I tried these work. If you ask Randall, he will tell you these are working because of all of these deep information. So that's the level of insight that he has. So if you have any questions that is more in-depth, more underlying, what's the reasoning of this? He will be able to answer it much more better than majority of the people.
Sweet. I'm so excited. Thank you. I'm amazing, everyone. I'm so great. Just kidding. All right. So I'm just going to show my screen. This is literally what I was working on yesterday. At the top of the call, some people were joining. I mentioned that yesterday I had my biggest one shot of all time. I wanted to take a step back and talk about like how I think through like software engineering. I mentioned that I did a one shot this morning yesterday that was an hour and a half and it worked. The first time, which was like really cool. But like a lot of people say like, well, why does one-shotting matter? Is it a token savings thing? Is it like why do you care if you're one-shotting stuff? And I care a lot because if you're not one-shotting stuff, it means that you don't have a process. You're just talking back and forth. I don't want AI that just does stuff for me. I want AI that I can like trust and that does things correctly. And if you don't have a process, you're not like there. If you can't just like set an AI and let it go do stuff on its own, it means that like you'll never decouple your own productivity from the AI. The goal for me is to scale my productivity by like orders of magnitude. So like, not even 1,000 agents, just one agent gives me 1,000 times productivity. And then I have 1,000 agents that I can manage who give me whatever that is, 1,000,000 or a million X productivity, right? Like that, so that my goal is to like have an exponential return on my investment. And inherently, like, if you are coupled one-to-one to something, if you're doing an hourly job, inherently you're coupled one-to-one to the hours put in, hours put out, which means that you'll never get an exponential return on that. When I think about like what I want out of AI, I want this exponential return that like continues to grow forever. I want it to always be better and always have just like the quality to always improve. And so when I think about this stuff, a lot of the things I'm thinking about are like, okay, how can I communicate most effectively? I think actually this is kind of my controversial thing. People won't necessarily agree with me on, but I actually think models are good enough to get to AGI today, artificial general intelligence. And I think they might even be good enough to get to artificial super intelligence, just with the models we have today. And the reason why we're not there today, in my opinion, is because we don't communicate our preferences effectively. When we talk to a model, a lot of times we'll just like send one message and we'll send like one sentence and be like, okay, like go do this thing and like make no mistakes. And it's like, well, what does make no mistakes mean? Do you literally want me to make no mistakes? Because if you want me to do that, I'll take like 20 hours and I'll find every bug and whatever. Do you figuratively want me to make no mistakes? Make no obvious mistakes? Like what does that mean? Right. And so a lot of the things that I think about are around how to like not just communicate with AI, but communicate with people. Throughout my career, I've always been obsessed with like so my first jobs that I had were in TV. And TV is really fun. It's fun to make TV. Like it's like a blast, but everyone gets treated really poorly because it's really fun. So like everyone gets paid kind of poorly and like you work really terrible hours. And anyway, like a lot of the reason why TV sucks is that everything surrounding the hour that you're on TV is like really annoying. And then the hour that you're on TV is like super fun. So like I was always thinking of ways of optimizing that other 7 hours of your job. How do you make it so that like the other 7 hours was like more fun? So that led me to like when I was at Facebook, for instance, a couple of years ago, there was layoffs. I knew that the layoffs were coming a little bit before other people did, just because. So, what happened was like I was on a team of like 7 people, and then my entire team, except for me, got reassigned to something else. And so I was just on a team of 1 person. And I knew that layoffs were coming. And so this thing that I did that was crazy was I started building out documentation of like all of our entire roadmap in like a really big way. I wrote a ton of documentation. And I knew that we had these people called boot campers. Boot campers are like new grads. They come out of school and then Facebook hires them and then they like pick a team to join. So like you're not like joining a specific team, you're joining Facebook and then you join a team later. So the boot campers weren't able to join teams. So as a result, like I basically recruited boot campers to do my whole roadmap. And so I had 20 boot campers that would work on my stuff and they were like brand new, right? They had no context about Facebook. They didn't know what it was like. And so I was like doing office hours and I had all these docs and I was doing all this stuff. And that was what helped. So I got like the best possible performance rating you can get because I still shipped my whole roadmap, right? And that sort of communication stuff was, all of that stuff is what made me more effective as a software engineer, is like being able to communicate at scale. And so when I think about coding and AI, it's just that to like this crazy extreme where it's like, if I can just communicate effectively with this magical mathematic box, it will like output the thing I want, right? So I'll share my screen now and I'll just talk about some of the concepts that I think about every day. So I guess the first thing is like you can go to my Substack, which is randallb.com, and I have a bunch of this stuff there. So like and subscribe. Just kidding. There's just one post that's like the most important post, which is these like 3 pillars for product command. So I've come up with this idea that I'm calling product command. I might change the name soon. We'll see, but it's called product command right now. And it's based on the military. So the military has this concept called mission command. If you are so like this comes from the Prussian military and like the 1800s, they were the Prussian military. Obviously, Prussia doesn't exist, so they didn't succeed for that long. But like they were able to punch above their weight class for a while, and they were able to do a really good job of like organizing their army. And one of the things they did that became this like thing that everyone adopted around the world was this thing called mission command, where instead of command and control is this idea of like, if you ever played StarCraft or like any real-time strategy game, a lot of times you like send a group of units to go to a specific place and you're like, go do this thing. Actually, Settlers of Catan, right? I think that's kind of similar. I don't know. But like if you play these like real-time strategy games, a lot of times you're like, okay, go do this specific thing. Like, go over here and do this thing. You go over here and do this. You're very much command and control. You're telling them what to do. And if you were to cut the AI off, if you were to cut your troops off and they were to just like operate by themselves, they would just like be in chaos because they would have no idea what to do. Right. They would, because if you lose communication with the ultimate commander, you don't know how to complete the mission because you're so focused on tactics. The military has this idea, it's not just the US, pretty much every military now, this idea of centralizing intent, but decentralizing execution. So the idea is that like you want to centralize what you want to have happen, but then when you actually execute it, you want to have everyone go execute the mission by themselves. So this makes it so that like if you were to get cut off from your commander or whatever, and you were to have like, drama, theoretically you can still complete the mission as effectively as possible. So the way this looks in practice for military is like who gives a commander, and like every one of those commanders goes down and like, oh, by the way, the link's randallb.com. So you can go there and like, it's like the second link. So every step of the way you like tells a commander, and every single step they become more and more strategic or more and more tactical. So the first might be like, we're going to go like be in charge of this part of the world. And then the next one says like, we're going to do that by doing this. And so all the way down, they're giving these strategies that are becoming more and more tactical for each level. And then ultimately at the end where you're like the individual soldier, you're extremely tactical. You're like, I'm going to walk here and I'm going to do these things. But the funny thing is those first two things, the purpose and the end state, they stay basically consistent through the whole tree of people. So the purpose is like, why are we doing anything at all? What's the like objective of doing this thing? The end state is like, if we were successful, what is the actual outcome that we're going to achieve? Right. So like, we're going to have this thing happen and it's going to feel this way. Feel is, especially if you're like used to being in CS, it's really weird to think about the idea of like, how does something feel versus how does something work? You want to have feelings. I want it to feel this way. I want it to have this aesthetic. I want it to have this vibe. End state for me, a lot of times is like that level of stuff. I don't know. It's kind of weird. Constraints are decisions that you've already made. So we want to use this framework. We want to do this thing. We want to whatever. So like, don't even consider how to, like, these are considerations that we've already made that you have to like follow. Trade-offs are a ranked list of priorities. So the most common trade-off in the military is this idea of tempo. Tempo is not the same thing as speed. Tempo is how often you force a opposing force to like make a decision. So it's like sometimes like if you have a high tempo, it means that the other military is reacting to you. But the trade-off is that if you have a high tempo, it means that like things are going to be more chaotic and crazy. So like, you're doing stuff to like make someone else react. And so like, yeah, anyway, so you have this, so like a lot of times in the military, they'll have a trade-off and they'll say like, keep the tempo up because blank, or don't keep the, like, do this thing at all costs and don't worry about the tempo, right? Like it helps people know how to make a decision. And that's also like you'll see how that shows up in AI in just a second. Risk tolerance is like, where are places we're allowed to be risky and where are places that we should absolutely not be risky. Escalation conditions are, what do we do? Who do we talk to? When do we need to talk to someone else before making a decision? Verification steps are a way for someone to independently verify that the thing you've done is correct. And then activation and revalidation, when does this intent take effect? And then how often do we have to think about this intent again? So BoltFoundry, the software that I have, I should like start it and you can like see what it does. Let's see, BFT run. So our software, we've taken this idea and it permeates the entire stack of the software. So every agent, every action, every person, which is funny, like the entire company has an intent. This is like an example of our software. Every coworker has an intent. Oh, except for this one. Oh, I broke it. I one shot. I've revealed a bug, which is unfortunate, which I messed up the file system. So I didn't have a perfect one shot. That's right. So this is an intent for one of our customers. They're a art museum in Eastern Idaho. This is their intent for their project. So this is like, ultimately, they want to have, like if BoltFoundry is working perfectly, this is how BoltFoundry would work. And as BoltFoundry does stuff, we're not passing this in as like instructions to the LLM. This is available in the file system so that the LLM agent can discover it. And then the idea is that like, rather than give LLMs specific directions, you want to make it so that they can discover the most important context. This file system that you can see here is like pretty regimented. So these things called areas, these are areas of responsibility. So areas of responsibility, like they're not time bound, but they're things you're responsible for. A lot of times these will have projects. We don't have any projects in here because we're just doing areas. And then we have we literally call them coworkers because coworkers is the class for agents and people. Agents and people have like very little difference other than agents are computers and people are people. But like the concept of a coworker, of like giving a coworker a task or talking to a coworker, all that's kind of the same. The main coworker that we have is this chief of staff. So the chief of staff it's really crappy. It's not set up right anyway, but it's normally you have an intent that looks more like this. And so in this case, we're describing the intent of the specific bot. And again, this isn't sent to the LLM. This is like stuff that the LLM can discover when it needs to. Because it's fractal and it goes all the way from the bottom to the top, it means that if the LLM gets confused before it escalates, it can try to get more context. And so in practice, what that means is if you're doing this correctly, you have just enough docs that the LLM can discover them without getting confused, which is like a very fine line, but like it's totally doable. In our code base, this is implemented through we have a mono repo. Actually, I should open VS Code because it'll be easier to browse through. Sorry, let me grab this over here. This is A, this is B. Hold on. This also brings me to the point that like I don't typically have some people so when I first started, there's this crazy dopamine overload that you get when you're like, oh my gosh, like I can do anything. I can literally build like anything ever. This is amazing. And so you get this like crazy dopamine overload, and then you're like trying to like have 10 windows open at once, and you're like doing all this stuff, and you end up like building nothing, because you just like are like building everything. So we have this philosophy that we call build less, ship more. In our agents.md, like it's pretty short. So this is with formatting, it's 77 lines, right? So it's not very big. And most of the things that we put in our agents.md are, I'll make this bigger. Hopefully you can see it better. Most of the stuff we put in the agents.md are like, you can think of them as like company culture stuff. The main thing we put in is this thing called build less, ship more. So build less, ship more is like, if you guys have ever used LLMs, a lot of times what will happen when you start is they'll try to like solve every use case. And people also do this. People like, especially early programmers are like, oh, I should like make it so that every time I allocate a string, it like allocates the smallest amount of string possible. And it's like, what? Like you should ship things. You should be building stuff that ships, build cool stuff and get people to use it, which like, to be clear, I'm king of not doing that. So an engineer who wants everything perfect. And so this is like a personal maxim that I have to defeat myself. But like, build less, ship more, for me means that I'm only building one thing at a time. And then when I'm waiting, I'm building something else. So typically that means I have two sessions going. Like so I call this A Bolty and B Bolty. And I built all this infrastructure so that these run in containers. So they're completely isolated from my computer. And like, anyway, that's why the BoltFoundry app is like built on all this stuff too. If you go to boltfoundry.com/security, you can see like a lot of the stuff that we think about. Anyway, so each of these sessions, typically I'm trying to figure out like, how do I build a specific thing? So yesterday, you can read, I actually have, I don't know if I published this on my blog. I haven't actually. It's on a gist. So I'll publish this on my blog for you guys so that you can see it. Like you can see it's like extremely light. And the only tactical thing I have in here in the entire thing is source control, because I use Sapling instead of Git. And like, that's like super weird because that's like it's the Facebook source control. And like, I haven't used Git in like a decade now. Don't want to use Git. And so I have to put this in my agents.md because it's the only thing that confuses the LLM all the time. I try not to have anything else in here that's like, the way I think about it is like, how do I make my LLM go into the P90, the 90th percentile of software engineers? How do I put it in the mindset to do this stuff? Not how do I tell it to do all this stuff? And this kind of goes back to the like product command stuff. It's not about being tactical and being like, how do I do these specific tactics? It's about being strategic. How do I put my AI in a mindset so that it's going to make the right decisions automatically, right? So all of my agents.md is focused on that. And again, it's only 70 lines and formatted. Like, so I don't even know how many lines it is unformatted, but it's not that many. Let's go to actual, like what I'm actually doing. So BoltFoundry actually, if you look, is like laid out extremely similarly. Like I have this chief of staff, and the chief of staff is like who I talk to, have them do things. And then I have my like files and other stuff over here that I look at. And then we have like a news feed that like it's broken because I broke it on purpose actually. But we have a news feed that lets you see like what has happened. And then like, yeah, that's kind of like the premise of what we're doing, I guess. Oh, it's not I should put it in demo mode. Let me do that really quick because it'll be easier to see stuff. Demo museum. So as things go, there's a process. Like, if you guys have watched a movie ever, there's 3 acts to a movie. There's beginning, middle, and end. Beginning is where you set up the motivations of the character. The middle is where the character goes on a journey to experience something new, and then the end proves that they learned something in the end. Right? That's like essentially the structure of every movie you've ever watched. So projects that I do with my work are extremely similar. So I have the intent drives, we're going to do something, or a bot's going to think this way, or something along those lines. And then it's going to perform actions. So in this case, like we're just going to say, look through and get some newsletter signals about like how something works. And so it's going to go do all these things right now. And then as it's doing those things, it tells me like what's going on. And here's stuff that I've been doing. If you go to that blog post again, so what I'll do is I'll set up an intent that's like I'll look at every single word in the intent, and I'm not writing it, right? I'm still using the LLM to write the intent. So I'll be like, this is my other like Randall Bennett pro tip that people love, which is if I'm working on a new project, there's two things I'll do. One is I'll actually ask like, what's the most important thing I should work on? And like the LLM crawls through, and like, because I have enough docs, it's able to know like what I should work on. So it'll go through and like find what we're working on currently and like trying to figure out like where stuff is. Anyway, so right now it's going to go through and do some of that stuff. And then the other thing that I do is I do one message at a time. So I'll just stop this one because I'll just, whoops. Sorry, my son just fell. He might cry, but it's fine. All right. So the other thing is I'll do, I want to work on something. I'll make this bigger. Sorry. Ask me high level questions one at a time so we can get on the same page. So when you do this, the reason why I have it ask me questions is because you actually walk the LLM through this idea maze on its own. And then by doing that, like it will naturally ask the questions it's going to ask, and you can guide it into like the thing you want to work on. Ken, you have a hand raised. I just figured out that's what that sound was. I didn't know what that sound was. So
I have two questions for you. One of them is you said LLM figures out the files. Do you have anything that allows LLMs to find files? You can answer this, then I'll ask the second.
Okay, so yeah, in here, like, oh, that's so funny. I put it in the vault on accident. Like, that's what's also funny is you like discover stuff because you like, do stuff and then you like don't think about the implications. And it's like being the CEO of a company and saying something off the cuff, and then like that ripples down to like the front level employee. So I was like, I want to put all this crap in the vault, and like this is actually a piece of stuff that's not supposed to be in the vault, which is funny. So typically I'll tell it like we have one thing that says like, most of the time, you can look through policies. So we have this folder called work loops. Work loops is essentially where all the information goes to, it's all the meta information, like work about work. And then in this, I have a policies folder. And so the policies folder, you can think of as medium-term memory. So the policies folder is where I put like just tons of like things that you would need to know that you don't need to know all the time, but you would want to look up. So for instance, these are like the kinds of intent that we have. We have two kinds of intent, or I guess we have three, but we have a company intent that's like, this is the biggest level. And then we have product intents, which are like time bound. And then we have area intents, which are like, ongoing responsibilities and stuff. So this is stuff that like most of the time the LLM doesn't need to know unless it's working on something. This is the general structure that I have. It's a little bit different now, but this is if you guys have ever heard of like the second brain movement, it's like Tiago Forte. He has this thing called PARA, which is funny for Spanish speakers, but it's PARA, like it means projects, areas, responsibility, or projects, areas, resources, and archive. And I've adapted that to like be a little more LLM specific, but like essentially like our whole work loops folder is kind of organized this way, where I just cleaned it out. So it's not currently organized this way, but typically we have areas that describe that stuff like I was talking about earlier. And then because I tell in the system prompt, the only thing I say is like, if you're not sure where to look to find something, look at this documentation organization. I try to make it so that like the LLM follows a path every single time where it's like, okay, the first thing I do is I look at documentation organization, and then that tells me like where to go to find stuff. So like documentation organization is here. It says the docs folder is for external stuff, policies is for internal, whatever. And it like describes all this stuff. If I do that, it means that the LLM can find stuff. The funny part is like doctrine, it'll use all the words that you use. So doctrine is like, it's like both a spiritual thing, but also a military thing that's all about talk about like mission doctrine and stuff. So they typically what I want to do is like actually this is a process I do too that's really useful. Let me go back to my code sesh. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll say like if you were going to go work on something without using any tools, where would you go? And I'll try to just like dig into the mindset of the LLM. And so see, it knows that it should go look here. And so the first thing it reads back the agents.md. And then I'm like, hey, I want to work on the most important thing. Where would you look next. You can make one tool call. So now it's like really like trying to consider what's the best tool call that I could make. It's probably going to like, yeah, so it just did a general search for like words that are most important. But it did look in the work groups folder, which is nice, right? So like it picked the right place to look roughly. And let's see. Yeah, I mean, it kind of figured it out. It's like, whatever. It says it would look at, the product area one that's whatever. Anyway, it's making this mistake, which is it's looking in the vault. So I don't want it to do that. If I really wanted to fix that, I would go in the agents.md and be like, never look in vaults because vaults are historical information and like don't think about them or whatever, something like that. But I just walked through the process of like, how is the LM thinking? Like, if it's going to figure out how to do work, how is it going to do the work? And a lot of times I'll just like stop and I'll say, it seems like the LM is making the same mistake over and over. And I kind of like step it back and try to debug, like, why is the LM thinking this way? And then what are ways that I could like put something in the way for it so that it could think more effectively? And does that answer your question? I'm not sure if that answers your question, but
it does. My follow-up question is, where's the edge cases where the balls drop? You did put some dots and so on, but it couldn't figure it out, or it did the wrong thing. What are the edge cases that happens, and is there ways to avoid?
This is going to sound weird, but like it doesn't happen anymore. So I don't have, like when I first was doing a lot of coding, that was happening all the time. But like I actually don't hit too many edge cases ever, I would say. Like it mostly just does its thing because I've structured it in the way where like all I've been thinking about for the last year and a half is how to make AI reliable. And so I have done that. like I would say it always, it either gets it right the first time or can recover and get it right without me intervening. And a lot of that's just because of like mindset stuff and whatever. But like, I don't think there's a time when I ever have to like, nowadays, like I don't think I ever have to be like, is it going to find the right stuff? It just does always. Demi, your hand raise.
I'm curious about your vault and how you use it. And then like, do you save every single version? Is it like a Git history type of thing, or is it something else? And what do you use it for?
So in our work loops folder, the vault is, I just dump stuff that's like, so like what if, right maybe now I don't have, what's that?
Maybe an example would be.
Yeah. I mean, like right now I don't have a ton of, so every folder has a vault. It's not just one vault. Every folder has its own vault. So like when I'm working on a project and I finish the project, it like goes into the vault. And then there's a top level vault. And like this reset is like all the stuff that I had basically before 2 days ago. Like this is like all the areas that I had and all the coworkers that I had and all that stuff. And I did a reset because I wasn't happy with like I actually couldn't, it wasn't even that the bot was doing a bad job. It's that like, I didn't know, I wasn't able to like, find stuff. And because I wasn't able to find stuff, I did the reset, even though it was still effective for my bot. Cause I want to be able to like work with my bot and not have my bot just go do stuff by itself. Right. And so I did the reset because I was just like, screw this. I need to like start over. I'll like clean out the vault every once in a while. So like you always have git blame, right? Blame always exists to be able to like look at stuff that's like way old. And like, I guess that I should mention commit messages. I have very structured commit messages for the exact same reason that I have structured everything. So that like, if I do a git blame, it'll tell you, I'll just show you like one of the commits actually, because why not? This is the most recent commit. So every commit that I do has these sections: motivation, changes, tests, plan, risk rollback, follow-ups. So that like, if I ever do a git blame, it's able to say like, here's all the stuff that we touched. You can also see like, obviously all the files that were touched. So in this case, like I touched these 5 files and then this is why we did it. Right. And by having this paper trail for really old stuff, really old code or really old whatever, blame is useful to get like, you know, blame is how you get context. This is like a Facebook thing too. When I used to work at Facebook, we would try to like, I worked on branded content, which is this area that like literally the reason why I was only one person is because no one cared about it, but I did. And so a lot of the code was like really old. And I would use these sorts of ways of like going back and spelunking through. Vault is like a baby version of that, where it's like it's stuff that like is relevant enough that you might want to come across it using just grep, right? So like every coding agent uses this thing called riprep. Riprep is like a fast rep written in Rust. And anyway, so like if I do a keyword search and I want to accidentally discover something, I leave it in the vault. And then when it's like, I don't want it to accidentally discover that anymore, I want it to just be like a historical record, I like delete it from the vault. So like this is all stuff that's like pretty recent within the last like month or two. And then like in a month, I'm just going to go clean it up. And like this right now is a manual process because I don't have my agents. All the agentic stuff I'm focusing on is for customers and not myself. Like I'm mostly just like going to keep limping along until my customers are well served, and then I'll do agents and whatever. Anyway, does that answer your question? Sorry, I'm ADHD man. So.
Another question. Why name it Vault instead of Archive? I feel like if you name...
I want to show it at the bottom. I just want it to be like at the bottom of the list and not at the top. Archive is like objectively a better word, but it's just like when it lexically sorts, I don't want it to lexically sort at the top. That's like completely the reason it's stupid.
I usually name those stuff Z Archive.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm like, you can do that, but I just wanted it to be like a pure form of speech. And like, that's actually another interesting point is like, I use jargon pretty frequently. So like, it's less so now. I mean, we have work loops, but I used to have this thing called memos, and I would be like, write a memo about blah, which is like a word that kind of what it means, but it doesn't mean anything specific in programming. So when I would say like write a memo, it would know like, oh, this is kind of like a weird thing that I should like care about. And that's when I use intent. I'll say like product intent and whatever. Like that, like having jargon means that the AI can sort of just like identify if it's weird in any way. I like in my agents.md, I'm like, if you're confused at all, go do this thing, right? Go look up this thing or whatever. By using jargon, it'll help the AI discover stuff that it would like. It's just like a way to like shorten the communication process. It's a way to increase the bandwidth per word. This is super, I think very deeply about this stuff. I think a lot of this idea of communication bandwidth. How can you make each token have more bandwidth? How can you represent more information in each token? So jargon is one way to do that. Another way to use it, to think about it, is like, if I say like Jerry Seinfeld as a clown versus like an observational comedian from New York as a clown, right? Like that's, if I say Jerry Seinfeld, you get all this extra stuff. It's like B movie and whatever, and you get all this extra bandwidth. Whereas like the more general you are, the less bandwidth you get. And so like a lot of times I'm thinking about like, how can I squeeze more bandwidth out of each token or out of each word so that every token contributes to a specific like thing. Demi, go ahead.
In your intent file, you said there was like 7 categories as far as I know.
Yeah, there's also an appendix at the bottom, but yeah, there's 8, yeah.
And then when you showed us example, I think I saw like 4 categories.
Not just because they were the top. The actual like intents are, so like this is the actual intent is like, it just, yeah, like this is a way long one because I was doing a fundamental, this is the one that went for an hour and a half because I was doing a fundamental refactor of like the demo that we had been doing used a lot of shitty things that were like fast, and I wanted to fix it so that it was actually good. And so I did sort of like a more fundamental refactor of like, we need to use GraphQL, GraphQL subscriptions and all this stuff so that like it's more reliable and whatever. So this is like one of the longer intents that I've done where like I put in like a ton of constraints, for instance, because like I already made a ton of decisions. And then so the companion to, so an intent is completely strategic. And then the companion to the intent is a README. And this is the best README I've ever done in my entire life. I was so excited. So a README is still not implementation specific, but it's more tactical. So it's like I tell it specifically, like do stuff in this order, like think about these things, like you know, I actually wrote out like this is how we want the GraphQL to look, right? And then when I did the hour and a half, like the normally when I start a process, like I'll have the intent, and then I'll be like, okay, like I mean, there's probably like a instance of this I can find or Zoom. Yeah, so this is like, is this the one that? Oh no, this is the one we were just using. Resume that one. Yeah, so this is like, oh, this is actually the hour and a half one. I actually have it here, which is cool. So I'll just like walk you through it really quick because this is probably like the most interesting thing I can do. How do I get to the top? Page up, page down, home. Yeah. All right. So like I always talk to the AI as like a coworker, just mentally in my mindset. I'm always thinking of it as a coworker. And so the first thing I always do is I paste in the intent, and then I have in my blog, I literally open my blog every single day. It's so funny. And I have this this phrase, and I just copy and paste it in, and then I like paste it and hit enter, and then it starts going, and it's like goes for as long as it wants. In this case, like you can see that like I didn't do anything for like a while. Oh, this is not the right one because this had a crash, but hold on, let me go to the end. Do I have an end key? I don't have an end key, ironically. Hold on, Q. So it looks like I actually didn't even fork this. Oh, this is because I had this one I had like the longest session I've ever had. Byron's here. Actually, Byron and I were talking about this recently. We were saying like when we started using Codex 5.4, actually he sent me the link to the Codex 5.4 model card, and it says that like it in the middle of it, it's really bad at making tool calls early on, but once it has enough context, it'll actually make tool calls really effectively. And so Byron and I, speaking for him, he can speak for himself if I'm wrong, but we just like kind of stopped worrying about context windows, and we just like let it manage its own context window. And so this is like an eternal long session because like we like because it's like eternally long. Like before this, I would do a lot more thoughtful context window management, but now I kind of just like let it go. So in this case, like let me just try to get to the actual. I don't even know how far back it is, but I went through and I had it go do a bunch of stuff. Then I have it do code reviews and all this other stuff. And I have it record feedback. And then I have it do another pass. And anyway, there's like this process. Thing I haven't mentioned at all that I should mention that's like most important. We have these things called AARs, after action report. AAR. So I guess this is the template. AARs are similar to intents in that they are designed to, intents are designed to explain what we're going to do. That phrase that I have is like what to do to start, and then AARs are like what to do after. So like they describe the work that actually happened, how we did things. So they're really quick. Usually it's like a context and intent, and then what happened is usually I need to fix this because it's been not doing bullet points lately. But they're typically bulleted point list of like let's try. I want to find yesterday's because it was so good. 202604. Is it 09? I think. I don't know. It's not showing up. Whatever. But an AAR is how I don't have to. I don't code review most stuff, but I know what's going on generally, right? So like we ran into a couple bugs, but that's because I was sort of like we were redoing a whole bunch of stuff, and I kind of am okay with the bugs because I want them to be there. I want to like discover them. And these AARs give you the ability to like dig in and be like, okay, what did the bot actually do? Like, let me go find the actual one that we did. Yeah, it's going to be in here. Oh, it's gone. Not there anymore because I archived it. Whatever. I'll find a good AAR because this one's kind of crappy. And it's fine. Whatever. Usually what I'll do though is I'll have these individual bullet points. I'll go through each bullet point, and then if I'm confused, I'll talk to the AI and I'll be like, I'll use the context window that they actually use to make the decisions. So like that's this one, for instance, for all that like hour and a half thing yesterday. Actually, we discovered that files bug. I'm just going to say like, hey, I noticed that there was a bug in the coworker details view. The intent didn't display. Not sure what's going on there. Can we record this as feedback and then use as many sub agents as you want to investigate? So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll give it a bunch. So as the AR is going, I'll give it a bunch of feedback and I'll record the feedback and I'll just be like, I saw this. These are the code review things. I'll have it record all that feedback in a feedback folder. And then I'll have it go do another pass. And I'll be like, go address all this feedback. And by having it, the thing that I've kind of discovered over time is that by batching a bunch of stuff, the more back and forth you're doing, the more chance you have for the AI to make weirder decisions. The more you can give it a bunch of context and be like, go operate, the better it is at like like say you have like 10 things and you're like, the intent is always broken here, or like there's always a popover that's messed up. It will use all those feedback together to make a better decision about how to fix them versus fixing like one at a time locally, right? Demi, your hand is up again.
So I want to ask about the intent file.
Mhm.
So what is like a from your experience, what is a good intent file and a bad one, and what do you focus on while creating the intent file, and how can you like fuck up an intent file and then it won't work?
Yeah.
And that's the first question. I have a second question I'll ask after.
Yeah. So the cool thing about the intents is that you can't really screw them up. You can, but it's kind of hard. So like, this is a management theory thing. This is back to organizational communication. You'll hear this maxim for managers all the time. If you think that a subordinate can do something to 80%, you should delegate it. That's like roughly the threshold that I have for whether an AI has done a good job. So like I'll come up with an intent. I'll just read it and be like, okay, do I think this is clear? I'll ask, actually, there's a specific question that I always ask, which is like, it's gonna keep doing this, which, do I have my other window? Yeah, I do, it's over here. Do I have the other window? Let me see really quick, sorry. This is where it's like, I'll have 2 sessions because these usually take, I don't have it anymore, I'll just create another one. So this is how we spin things up from scratch. I'll just show you. Where did it go? Ghosty, where are you? There you are. Okay. So this is like literally how I'll just spin it up from scratch because it'll help understand. So we have this thing called, let me pull. Yep, Justin did something last night. Remote main. So then I have this thing called CodeBot. I'll just do BFT CodeBot workspace demo of Doom. So this will bring up a new container that's completely fresh. This is all my weird stuff that I built because I'm me and I build lots of weird stuff. So then it brings up codecs in this specific spot. I'll usually bring up a shell on the same thing, and I have a shell at the bottom, and then I have my actual code at the top. Oh, it's done over here. We don't need an integration test. Sorry, that's a bunch of stuff to bring up because I started a new window. We don't need an integration test.
Our time is almost up. We have a couple minutes. So should we summarize, and if they should take away 1 or 2 things from this call, what should it be?
Yeah. Sorry, I can talk about this forever, and I'll just hang out if you guys want to. I don't care because I'm trying to get customers and talk about stuff. The biggest thing is like just if you can't just let your AI go off and do stuff without you, you don't have a process. You have like hopes and dreams. So like coding in our modern world can feel like a slot machine where you're just like, sometimes it works awesomely and sometimes it works terribly. You don't want to play slots. You want to play poker. You want to build a strategy that you can improve. And like, yeah, it's still going to be random, but if you can focus on process as the product, even more than the product itself, and you'll get more exponential returns generally, right? So for me, that's intent. That's doing all this like repeatable stuff. I'm a systems thinker by nature, so this all kind of comes naturally to me. If you are not a systems thinker, just ask ChatGPT how to be a systems thinker and you'll become one. It's a magical world we live in. So yeah, like I think like, the biggest thing is just don't just make sure you have a process. Make sure you're like doing things in a way that's structured so that you can improve it. And then past that, like try to just like imagine your AI like a coworker and not like a robot. If you conceptualize it, like you're doing a bad job and not that the bot's doing a bad job. If you just conceptualize, you can control how you communicate with the bot. So if your communication improves and is more effective, the bot will be better at its job. And fundamentally, those are kind of the 2 things that I don't think most people consider. They think like, oh, well, if I just stuff more stuff into the context window, or if like the bot just gets smarter or whatever, it's like, okay, maybe, but there's this whole aspect of you talking about what you actually want to accomplish more effectively that can control the outcome of the bot better than anything else. Yeah, so like bots aren't magic. The LMs aren't magic. They're statistical, whatever. If you write clearly and you communicate more effectively, they'll be better at following your directions. And I think like those are my like kind of most controversial. bots are smart, we are dumb. If we can be smarter at communicating, then they'll be smarter. So yeah.
Cool. Thank you. So for those, Randall, you can say more, right? We can continue talking, like you said. And for those of you who joined, and you have to go, feel free to do so. We're gonna have another one level 5 session next week with Serena. She's the CEO of Fuzzy AI. She'll talk about more, and you can see more about her in the process. She's not a technical person, but she's built many apps, many flows that makes her life better, that improves her process. So then we get to see like a non-technical person building so much things by utilizing AI, and it's going to give us like a different way of thinking. And yeah, thank you for coming. And then Randall, we can continue.
Well, yeah, I guess like before we keep going, just anyone else raise your hand or have questions so that we can start with like, I can use people's time most effectively. It'll be easier. And then I can talk more if no one else has any other questions, but you can ping in chat or whatever. Demi has questions.
Yeah, so you had 2 files. The first one is intent. The second one was README.
Yeah,
correct?
Yeah. So those
file, as far as I understand, it's basically a plan file, right? And then does the intent generate the README, or like how do you generate README? And
yeah, so they're generated simultaneously. So they're not typically like they're generated simultaneously, and then I go back and forth, and I update one, and then I have one update the other, and then I update one, and I have one update the other, back and forth. A lot of times I don't even look at the README, to be totally honest, because like if I'm doing a small enough scoped project, I don't really care how it gets done. I just care about why we're doing it. The times that I do READMEs, like this is like the most intense README of all time because it's a fundamental refactor of the system, and I wanted to like I clear the context window on purpose. When I start a session, I clear the context window on purpose because I only wanted to think about the things that like we have decided or whatever. So the README I use as the pre-work, like it's like all the stuff that's like so that the AI doesn't have to start from scratch and just like crawl the code base and whatever, and it doesn't have to make decisions on the fly. So the intent is like, why are we doing this? It's the most important thing. It gets the mindset of like what we're going to accomplish. And then the README is like, this is a whole bunch, all the work we did in advance so that it can work. We put in the README. So like the README, for instance, has like all the most important part of the README, in my opinion, is this bottom thing. So previous reviews that we've done, all of the stuff that we've looked at, all the files, lock decisions, that's kind of the stuff that I really want to have in here usually. And then all this other stuff that I have in here usually isn't in here because I usually don't have like that detailed of an implementation plan because I just kind of let it like, do whatever. I don't really care how it gets done. But then like this, the LLM uses them both independently in different times. Demi, your question again.
So you said that you don't read much of README. Do you read all of intent or much? And you also said that you don't read the code much as well. So like, you don't read the code, you don't read the README, you don't read a bunch of these stuff. So what do you like read, and what do you make sure, and like how do you gauge like high quality? And then the second question is this behavior, doing it to a product which has like, let's say, millions of users. Because when it crashes, it's like a huge damage, right? But spend extra couple minutes, if you can prevent the crash, it makes sense. So then it's like, as a startup versus like later on, it's like later on, I think you have to read more, and early on, maybe you're just testing out and you're throwing away code, or like if you're gonna use the same code for like, let's say, a decade, and continue improving it, would you like read all of it, or how would you? Two questions. Where are you now? And second one is, how would you approach if you're doing like a bigger type of project?
I mean, I would think of it like, I just think of all these processes onboarding an employee instead of using software. So like if you onboard an employee or you like onboard a new process or whatever, initially you're going to go through and you're going to like do everything extremely manually, right? Because like you don't have confidence in the process and you don't have adequate controls. And, you know, you ship your org chart, you ship whatever. If you're not being thoughtful about like how you start something, you're going to have no idea if it's working. But once you know that it's working, it's working. Like you don't have to like do as much, right? So it's not like I started here. I didn't start like not reviewing stuff. I just got to a place where I know how to like work in my process. Like, I know where the hotspots are. And so the two non-negotiables for me is that I always read intent, every single word of the intent I read. And I read the AAR. I read the middle two sections of the AAR, the like what happened and delta analysis. I read those. And then the other ones I kind of leave for the LLM to whatever we'll look at later. If I do that, if I read every single word of the intent, and then I read every single word of what happened and delta analysis, I can have enough information about what actually happened to feel confident in shipping it. Right. So like the stuff yesterday, right? I had some bugs that I didn't know about, but I'm okay with them because we're in private alpha. And like the goal right now is not to have it be perfect. It's to get the structure right. So like, for now, I asked questions on the things I cared about, and the things I didn't care about, I didn't care about. It's like, whatever, right? The risk tolerance of the intent is oftentimes what will drive the implementation. And when I did the hour and a half, actually, the hour and a half happened because I had all these phases and I had it check off the phases that it thought it did. And then it just kept like looking and was like, did I really do this? 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 And because it did that, it would do its own loop. And then so like by the end, it had checked off all of them and it had decided that I had done all of them. And ones that it didn't check off, it wrote like, actually, I did it in a different order because whatever, or like, actually, I did this differently because I didn't need to, or whatever, right? But by having that loop and like, you know, as you get more comfort, now I'm comfortable. This is honestly the first time I've ever had an hour and a half that ended up as well as it did. It was like by far the best one shot of all time for me. And so now I'm comfortable being like, yeah, I probably can like one shot most things. I'm probably in a position where I can just have a bot just go off and do stuff and it probably will work. Maybe not every time, but like, I mean, better than I've ever done before. I was saying in our Vibe Pitters chat, I want to get a prize when it's longer than a movie. An hour and a half, I think I like beat some Pixar movies. But if I have like a 3-hour one shot, that'll be like a huge accomplishment because it'll mean that like I had the most complex possible feature and it did it right the first time, which would be super cool. Mo, your hand is up.
Yeah, I was actually curious about the scope of these intents or the review. Like, is it like a single features, like a whole milestone? How big is
they're getting bigger. If you guys, I don't know if you guys do levels like software engineer levels, but 3 is a new grad, 4 is like a 1 year in their career, 5 is like someone who can work independently, 6 is like a senior, 7 is like awesome, and 10 is like John Carmack, right? So the way it starts is like initially it's like a level 2 or a 3 where I'm coming up with an intent that is feature level. So it's like maybe it's not even feature level, it might be like sub feature level where it's like do these 4 things, like do this one thing so that you can contribute this bigger goal. And I used to do a lot of sub intents where it's like that had a project, right? And I would like split them out that way. The thing that I found was that like the more high level the intent and the better specified it is, the better the outcome in quality in general. And so like, I don't think you can just start and be like company level intent and like, we want a product that does this, build it for me. But I do think that you can like walk, you know, like as you're starting, I would imagine that you start with just like the smallest possible thing. And then if you can, my threshold is like, first I was like, can I one shot it for 5 minutes? And like, to be clear, I didn't start out thinking about it in terms of time. Time is a shortcut for complexity. But like, at first it was like, can I just like one shot anything? And then once I one shotted, I think like I actually was like freaking out in the Vibe Pitters chat when I started one shotting stuff. So I was just like, I can't believe this is like happening. This is crazy. So at first it was like 5 minutes, then it was 10 minutes, and then I was stuck on like 20 minutes for like a long. from December until essentially yesterday, I was stuck at this like 20 to 25 minute level where the feature, it was usually a whole feature, but it wasn't an initiative where it's like a ton of interdependent parts and whatever. The unlock was this README phase. So like instead of coming up with a bunch of sub-intents, the place that I landed was making the README more thorough. Because before the READMEs, I literally didn't look at. I was just like, do whatever. Making it so that the README had checkboxes for specific tactics that I wanted implemented, and then helping the AI not have to like figure out on the fly how to implement it by phasing it correctly. Like that, I think, is the biggest unlock I've had recently. Yeah, so like, I wouldn't just imagine you're hiring an employee, and the employee is super junior, and they have all the potential in the world, but they are super junior. Give them the project size you would give an intern, and then see how well they do, and then just keep leveling up until you're like at a place where it's like great. Mo again.
Actually, yeah, I have follow-up questions. So what's the lifetime of this intent? Or like how long do you keep it? Like do you kind of use it for like a separate or another feature that's kind of related? Because like you said, like with time it kind of improves, or like you kind of have longer one shots. So how does it improve with time? So what kind of accumulates with time, basically?
Yeah. So there's two different types of intents. There's scopes and projects. So scopes are like scopes don't have a time bound. So they're like, this is how we want our engineering to work. This is how we want our marketing to work. This is how we want our company to work. And then projects are time bound, where it's like, we're doing this thing and it's going to complete, right? The only difference in intents typically between those two things is that I have one section in the project intents called allowed changes. And that allowed changes, I just like scope where the places you're allowed to make changes. And I haven't written that in my blog because it's pretty new. And anyway, but the allowed changes. So a project intent just like comes and goes. And like right now we're launching our private alpha. So we have like an initiative, and that initiative is like a collection of projects. And typically I'll have like one project ahead, and then I keep all the projects behind as like historical reference before I vault them. And then like the policies folder is where all the knowledge accumulates. So I'll do the AARs. AARs are per commit. So every commit gets an AAR. And then I'll go through and it's just like, am I seeing stuff that's happening frequently? And then if I want to update policy, I'm still in the weeds enough that like, I don't watch the execution second by second, but I will like pop in and out and be like, okay, what's it doing? Like, how is it working? Whatever. And then if I see stuff that's happening frequently in the AARs or just like an execution or whatever, that will turn into policies. It's much like a company though. If you have too many policies, it slows everyone down. If you have too many policies, you create like this analysis paralysis when they disagree. So you kind of have to like thoughtfully be like, okay, like I haven't really evolved my policies very much because I don't like, the only time I want to add a policy is like if there's something dramatic that's like happening all the time. And I treat agents.md with even more suspicion. I don't want to update my agents.md ever unless there's like a huge sapling is like, that was like a thing I did like a year ago. And then the mindset stuff of like build less, ship more, focus on impact, all that stuff is like, it's like quarterly at most, right? It's like, okay, I'm seeing this thing where like the last thing I added was focus on impact because like it started to just like be obsessed with updating docs. It's like working in a big company where like it feels like meta work is work and it's not, right? And like, so I had to add that because I was just like, stop fucking updating all the docs all the time. And then like, because docs are easy to update and they don't give you any return, right? And I'm just like, stop it. But like, it still messes up my commit process. I have a run book. I call them run books, like when it's like a thing you should do a specific way. So I have a run book for how it should do commits. And it still messes up amending commits. Like it'll do amends wrong. And I haven't fixed it because I don't care enough. Like it's like, if it makes too many commits, whatever. Or if it occasionally messes up the commit tree, whatever, it's fine. I use stacked commits. If you don't use stacked commits, you're not doing it right. But yeah. Anyway, hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you.
Cool. That's really all I have. I'm happy to like answer any other questions if you have them, but
Cool. I guess that's it.
cool. I think
Wow.
like go subscribe to the Substack and sign up for BoltFoundry, the BoltFoundry waitlist, please. And hopefully I'll have a product that you can pay money for shortly. So then pay me money, hopefully. So yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for the presentation, Randall.
Cool. All right. Thanks everyone.